Okay, so I'm half right about what was left with the last episode. Yes, my thoughts on episode 5 of Made in Abyss second season, so full-on spoilers again. I'm going to put the warning there just because of the subject matter it's going into, but yeah, half right and half wrong. Technically, yes, Mitty was a creation of this village, but technically, yes, it's Mitty. It kind of insinuates that this is a perfect copy. This is something that was created with soul and everything of the original Mitty, so it kind of implies that this is, depending on what you think about how they handle souls within this world, this is technically Mitty. This is exactly what Nanachi had to essentially have Regu destroy, is now recreated, or was recreated in this world. Now, granted, wouldn't have all the memories ever since that point, because this would have been before Nanachi took Mitty and ran off, but still implies this idea that this is something that is a creation of this particular place. Now, what's funny was that they mentioned the idea that when Bondrewd brought this thing, he knew, but Belaf knew by the scent of Mitty that they were an immortal being. And that technically plays in the whole thing about Regu basically demolishing the original Mitty, but it kind of was, for a minute there, making me believe that, no, what if he did blast this and there was like a particle left that went off somewhere and made another Mitty or something like that? It'd be like, it won't die. But no, just similar to last episode, we did have 3 perspectives. Granted, 2 of them merged at some point, but for the most part, for Regu's side of things, he's just lost. And he's looking around, he's being chased by this gigantic monster, eventually falls off this cliff where the monster leaves him, and this robot, this thing that was with Fapata, ends up catching him and bringing him off to the side. It mentions at this point the direction that Regu is going is the opposite direction of the village. And he keeps hitting on this idea. Now, I was kind of wondering, like, why are they putting so much emphasis on the idea that Regu is going the wrong way? Is this some sort of symbolism, or is this some idea that this particular layer may shift? Or is it just that Regu has terrible direction and this thing keeps going, no, dude, it's that way. It's over that way. In this little brief conversation between the two of these, we kind of find out that they're somehow the same. Their creator is the same. They seem to be the same model of whatever they are, which what this thing calls is an interference unit. Whatever an interference unit is. But essentially explains that interference units are somebody that goes out, touches, and gathers information. Or they observe and touch to gather information. And again, he says that they're from the same creator because they seem like they're the same. And that because Regu is able to kind of travel wherever he wants to go, he would be the best person to try to figure out who their creator is because he doesn't know any information about their creator. He also knows that Fapata was generally curious if Regu was the Regu that she knew. And the only reason that Fapata was uncertain was because Regu didn't immediately come back to her the moment he arrived on that particular layer. And this thing seems to think that Regu needs to restore its data so that he remembers what he is. And that's basically all that we get from that side of things. They finally arrive at the village, they look down upon it, and that's pretty much all we get from Regu. I'll be curious at this point if Regu's story turns into anything really interesting. I'm at that point now where every kind of little reveal that we're getting of him isn't really interesting to me. But I really do hope that it comes to something really fascinating. Yes, granted, Regu was the biggest mystery at the very beginning besides the Abyss, but at this point, him just being a robot observatory thingamajiggy that just kind of wanders on his own doesn't really fascinate me too much. For the rest of the episode, we focus on Riko. We got a whole last episode of not much of her, so now we're getting a lot of her. She ends up greeting Ougonkyou, and he quickly just like, she goes out to give him a handshake, and he just kind of slaps it and says, yeah, that's great, and then walks away, so I guess we're getting nothing from him. But Riko confronts the chef and asks the chef, can you please teach me the language of your people? To which she oddly enough, agrees. And so they go through this whole process of learning the language of this village, which seems to be some sort of play off the symbols themselves. So he was describing as this symbol is village, and 50% of it is village, like 40% of it's cradle, and like 10% of it's mother. So it seems like the symbols themselves can, I don't know if they're implying the idea that this can partially mean something else, or if the idea that the symbol itself has multiple meanings, and depending on how you place it, it can change the meaning of it, which is, I think, something similar to how like katakana works and stuff, where all the symbols are imagery and the imagery can be used in different ways. But it's interesting here because like you have like this very motherly chef lady, and after teaching Riko how to do the language, she's like, man, now I really want a human child. It's like this motherly figure just wants a child of her own. But this leads to Riko kind of asking, where do you think my friends would be at? And she says, well, the only place I can think of that you probably wouldn't have known of, that the villagers don't go to, that might draw attention, is this place beyond the sacrifice hole, which whatever a sacrifice hole is this place that essentially whenever the villagers go there, they have like this increased feeling of uneasiness that will make them sick, so they leave. And so Ma and Riko go there and go all the way down into this cave, and we eventually run into, yes, Vueko. Vueko's down there, and she's surrounded by all these things, all these little shadow balancing things. And this is a very interesting scene because it seems like it's implying a lot about how the whole system was created, but also this kind of acceptance that she has for what it ends up being. As Riko is kind of asking if she knows where her friends are at, she's like, yeah, I can sense her, I can feel the village itself, I can feel where people are at. There's some people that are in some weird places, so yeah, I can probably show you where they're at. I just need you to remove these bindings. And she describes these bindings are something that she can't break herself, but if Riko touches them and says to go away, they will release her. And so Riko goes, wait. Are you a bad person? And this kind of turns to this whole discussion about, I guess, Vueko insinuating that she's not blameless, but at the same time, she's not a bad person. And the way that she comes to this conclusion is talking about the origins of this village itself. That they came there and sort of created a hell in itself. She says that the origins of the village itself was something that she didn't agree with. She didn't like the idea. She was opposing the creation of the village. And because of that, she was kind of exiled to darkness. But at the same time, at this point, she's fine with it. Like despite the fact that she opposed it, she's now kind of happy and that she does actually like the existence of the village. Because all these children gather there, they're distorted, but at least they can live on. And then she can stay there and listen to the signals from these little shadowy figures and listen to their lives, essentially. And again, asking if she's a bad person, she's like, yes, I technically got greedy. I got greedy at some point. I wanted to become more than human, and I guess this is what it came of it. So it's kind of insinuating a lot of things here. It obviously showed a brief shot of something that looks like Fapta breaking out of some sort of egg or something like that, looking very vicious. And that was when she was talking about this idea of them creating a hell. And yeah, the assumption here is that where my mind's going is that, okay, our last shot that we had from the history the people of the history, they came to this place that was obviously a very violent place. This thing grabs one of these creatures there and takes it away. She mentions the idea that this is a place that you cannot return from. Obviously, the idea of being distorted by the abyss itself, that's the indication of them being stuck there. And it's a violent place, so they need to create somewhere that's safe. And maybe you had, Beloff and Wakuzyan and maybe the other people that were with them, they wanted to create sort of a safe area they can protect themselves. I'm not sure how we get from here to how they make some sort of creation of this place, but somehow somebody figured out something to create a safe place for them to be. And maybe she wasn't okay with it because it required them to give up their humanity. And this is where I'm starting to get into a theory myself that what is the possibilities of this being the origins of the Abyss's curse? Is there a possibility that they stumbled upon something that would allow them to live on forever, become immortal basically, and it required them to create this sort of village? It created the curse itself, mutated everybody to where they can be immortal, but then have to remain in this one location. And that would be a really good excuse for Vueko to say, no, I don't like this idea. I don't like the existence of this. I'm against us creating this village. And so you maybe had people like Beloff that were going, no, this is something we're going to do. This is how I can gain power. This is how I can create immortality. I'll never have to go back home again. If anybody comes here, we can protect ourselves. And I'm going to assume that based on how Ougonkyou was acting at the restaurant, he's probably one of the types that as this conflict was happening and everything was going to heck, he was probably the guy on the side going, look, guys, I don't want to have anything to do with this. Stop fighting. He's probably like the guy that regrets that this happened in the first place. So I'm going to assume Beloff took control, created the village. Vueko was against it, got banished, and Ougonkyou was at the sideline as almost like a neutral party. Riko regrets asking if you're a bad person. She's like, I don't care. Releases her and says, I need you to help me find my friends. And this is when Ma starts puking. It's like this really great little scene. She's like, you're a really good person. And all of a sudden, Ma, over the side. It's like, Ma, you just ruined a little cute character moment. But no, that's when they rush back. And yes, we end up finding that in Beloff's presence, it does look like Vueko follows her, but she does disguise herself because she's afraid of people knowing that she escaped. Additionally, when she does get to Beloff's place, she doesn't want to go inside because she's afraid of them discovering that she's escaped. So We'll see where that goes later on. But yes, Riko goes inside there, ends up finding Nanachi, laying down with Mitty. And Nanachi is asleep, and Belloff informs her that, yes, Nanachi is now mine. Nanachi has given up their entire existence for the sake of purchasing Mitty. Now, I don't know why Belloff would have agreed to this, unless they've seen some sort of other value to Nanachi that we don't know. But it is kind of curious in my mind immediately. I start thinking about, well, what was so valuable about Nanachi versus Mitty? Is Nanachi an immortal as well? Because what we essentially have here is that what we discover is that, yes, Bondrewd brought Mitty to this place. And Belloff really badly wanted Mitty. He knew that it was an immortal. He kept offering so many things to Bondrewd, but Bondrewd never accepted it. So they decided to use the system to essentially sacrifice like half of his entire self, his entire body, his length, all of his legs, everything, just to get a copy of Mitty. So Mitty was reborn in this area, body and soul and everything, a perfect copy. And then he's been pretty much feeding off of Mitty this entire time. And since Mitty is an immortal, it's like an endless supply of this food, this sustenance that he likes. So when I started to think about, okay, you have this permanent food here, it's something that they really like. What was Nanachi that it was of equal value? Why was Nanachi's body and existence equal value to Mitty? I'll be curious to find out if they'll explain that at some point. And this does suck because this might be a thing where okay, so semi-spoilers to the OP. The OP, I know that some people out there, including myself, don't like watching OPs because they tell you things. And really the only thing that I got from the OP that I'm applying to this scenario here is that Riko, in the OP, her hair's cut. So my assumption was that when she offered up her hair to this thing, it was going to agree to it, because again, I see that she's had her hair cut in the OP, but obviously he's rejected that. So I'm curious as what is going to be the replacement for that, or is it going to turn into a thing that they're going to just decide to brute force get Nanachi out of there and fight against the shadows? Maybe Vueko can prevent the balancing from happening, thus allowing them to take Nanachi from there, or are they going to figure out, is Nanachi going to realize at some point, I can't do this. This isn't necessarily Mitty. This isn't the Mitty that I know. And again, I think that's going to play into the idea that at some point Nanachi is going to ask something of Mitty that's going to apply to their time they spent together alone. Because again, this is the Mitty that was created as a perfect copy at the point that it was still in possession of Bondrewd. And I wonder if that's going to be the thing that's going to make Nanachi realize this isn't my Mitty. Or is Riko going to use her hair for something else? But it was cool, though. She actually got into character, really did start to bargain. Like, he originally asked, I want all of you in compensation to get Nanachi. And in return to that, she said, no, wait, I need to bargain. And so she goes, yeah, look, I'm really valuable here. You can't have my whole self. And that's why I said, okay, well, then decide your 2 eyes, your 2 legs, or half of your intestines, or half of your innards, rather. And he says, I'll do it in a way that you won't die, basically. So don't worry about losing these limbs or anything. Yeah, that's not going to happen. I mean, she could give half of her innards. I can see that being the case, and she's still able to travel on, but that would be interesting. Half of your internal organs. I mean, you technically have 2 kidneys. I mean, you can get rid of one of the kidneys, maybe half a heart. That way she can't move as much. I don't know that they would necessarily go that direction. But it was interesting that she was... It's kind of really kind of vague in how they're describing this, because the process goes that Belloff spent half of themselves to get a copy of Mitty born in this place. And then it turns into, well, Nanachi used their entire selves to acquire Mitty. And it almost felt like Riko was going to have to purchase both of them, but it's like, but technically Nanachi owns Mitty. You don't have to buy Mitty. And Belloff maybe accepted this. Like, well, if Nanachi buys Mitty from me with their entire selves, I technically still own Mitty. So it's like, it's kind of rough. But essentially what Nanachi was doing initially is trying to get him to stop eating Mitty. Like, he's sitting there consuming Mitty while he's standing there. And maybe Nanachi owning Mitty was able to prevent that from happening anymore. But again, I'm still curious as to how is Nanachi's equal value as Mitty in that purchase. I know that Nanachi is special, don't get me wrong. We've already established that Nanachi is special. They have their entire self, despite the fact of being changed. Kaja here recently mentioned that that you're a special thing because you still retain all of your life despite the fact that you've been changed by the Abyss. But anyways, a lot of crazy stuff happened, a lot to think about, but I hope you guys enjoyed my impressions of the episode. As always, if you did, make sure to hit that like button down below, comment, let me know what you thought of the episode, subscribe to the channel if you've not already, share this video if you can, support us on Patreon, or throw a tips link in the description below. We definitely appreciate everybody does, and y'all take care.